Hello, and welcome to POMA Does, a podcast produced by the Pennsylvania Osteopathic Medical Association. We provide a voice for osteopathic medicine and share insights on issues important to osteopathic physicians, residents, and students, as well as those who embrace the osteopathic philosophy. POMA's mission is to promote the distinctive philosophy and practice of osteopathic medicine for our patients, our members, and the communities we serve. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to the POMA Does podcast. In this episode, we will be discussing empathy, the importance developing empathy has in our ability to relate to and care for our patients, and how our personal experiences do indeed influence the way we practice medicine. I'm Lisa Witherite-Rigg, DO. I'm a retired osteopathic family physician with the last 5 years of my career in medical education and graduate medical education. Communication is one of a physician's most crucial skills. Being able to question patients, actively listen, and process information with perspective and wisdom contribute to our ability to care for patients. The often overlooked communication skill is empathy. So I'm going to pause right there, and I'm going to introduce you to our other panelists, and I'll ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves. Let's start with Dr. Cynthia Hoffmeyer.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Hoffmeyer. I'm the oldest of all the people on this panel. Lisa, I think you trained under me at Clarion Hospital. I'm in Clarion, Pennsylvania. I've been in practice for 38 years, family practice. But during my time in family practice, I started having a tremendous interest in aesthetic medicine. So in 2018, I transitioned my practice to a med spa. And it's really fun, and I absolutely love it, and I'll work probably until I die. And I have an office in Clarion, Pennsylvania, and one in Franklin. I still see patients not for family practice, but with skin health issues, because it's very difficult here in rural America to get an appointment with the dermatologist. And a lot of family practitioners don't have time even to remove moles. So I do a lot of that. I see a lot of kids with acne, a lot of people with psoriasis. They want moles checked. Last year, I took off 11 melanomas as a family practitioner. So it's just a lot, and it's fun. So that's what I'm doing.
Megan, will you share with us who you are and where you are in your journey?
Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Donlick. I am a rising fourth-year student at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. Currently, I am in my board's Step 2 studying period because I just finished my third-year rotations. I was at Bay Health for our core clinical campus there. And yeah, I'm just getting ready to study for Step 2 and then go into my fourth-year audition rotation.
Very good. Thanks for joining us, Megan. Cynthia Meyer.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Meyer. I am an internal medicine physician. I practiced in York, Pennsylvania for a decade or so, I guess, and then stepped back and did some medical directorship where I was working from home. Yes, you can work from home as a physician for a limited amount of time doing utilization management. However, I did miss clinical. I missed my patients. And so I took my new skills of medical director and paired them with clinical, and now I do a little bit of everything, including teaching in Troy, Pennsylvania.
Great. Thank you, ladies, for joining us tonight. So I want to start with the definition or a definition of empathy. Empathy can be defined as the ability to understand the personal experience of the patient without bonding with them. So I ask you, ladies, is there anything you personally would add to this definition? Let's start with Cynthia M.
I appreciated that definition. I think I often think about sympathy as meaning like you try to understand, but you don't really understand. Whereas empathy, I think more in terms of I understand exactly what you've gone through, or I can see what you're feeling, and more of that emotional connection. And that's what I would add to that is empathy is you can understand that feeling that what they're going through.
Cynthia H., anything you would add to that definition?
No, and when I think Cynthia M., I think you said exactly what I was thinking. I always think I was an empathetic person before I actually got into medicine, okay? And maybe that's what attracted me into medicine. And you think you understand on a certain level, but when you experience it, it makes you understand on a different level, okay? So you understand and you can put yourself in their shoes to finally understand exactly what it is that they're feeling. Like you try to do it. It's like if someone tells you that your dog died, right? you don't know how that feels until your own dog dies. It's that sort of thing. And so it gives you the feeling, the emotional feeling to understand it. So I agree 100%. I don't have anything really to add. It's just how I think about it.
And Megan, anything to add to the definition, the ability to understand the personal experience of the patient?
I think beyond ability, which sort of makes it a noun, I think there's a verb component to it, in that you can recognize and identify where a person is at emotionally, and also be able to live vicariously through them in a sense, understand their paradigm, take action in support of them because you understand this, and sharing in that experience. I think even though it's not a bond, however transient, it's still a connection of sorts.
I agree. It's that connection. So when we talk about empathy, there are actually different dimensions to empathy. The emotional, which is what we've all been kind of referring to. The cognitive, actually knowing what that individual is experiencing. And the behavioral, how we put that in action. Now, studies show physicians who have high levels of empathy are more efficient in partnering with their patients for therapeutic change. They can comprehend patients' needs, and they're able to stimulate patients to feel safe in expressing problems and concerns. So of those three components, the emotional, the cognitive, the behavioral, is there any one that particularly strikes you as being significantly impacted by your own personal experience? And I think I'll start here with this, if that's okay. There's been a lot of things in my life that I've experienced that I've actually needed to either seek medical care for, or I was in the position to provide care for patients. And one of the things that, I spent the first 7 years of my physician career, medical school and physician career, as a single mother. So I actually have that cognitive understanding of, what it's like to be a single mother, what it's like to be the sole breadwinner in the family, what it's like to be a young woman sharing with her family that, surprise, I'm going to have a baby. So for me, it really is the cognitive that has allowed me to address certain situations for people. Cynthia H., how about you? Emotional, cognitive, behavioral?
When you said those three words and you think about it, kind of hard to separate it, right? Into which one, right? But I would, in my heart of hearts, I was thinking the same thing that you just exactly said. So I'm a breast cancer survivor. And when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and when you start to feel every emotion that every patient is going through that same emotion, it makes you, the whole thing makes you aware of what everybody else is experiencing. So for me, I felt like I now can understand how they're like, why me? People ask when you get a cancer diagnosis, why me? Why did I get this? I'm a doctor. I asked myself crazy questions. I lost my mind reading every article about everything I could possibly read and about every research study that was being done. And I kept questioning. And so then you have to get yourself scheduled for appointments, right? So you have to get yourself scheduled for your first consultation with your surgeon, and you have to get then consultation with oncology, and then which one do you go to and how do you decide which one is the best? And all of those little micro details are what people are experiencing. So to me, then all of a sudden, because I was just always like, okay, just do what I say and you'll be fine, right? Now I could put myself in that position and realize, that wait to get that appointment is a lot of time. So you don't really think about what that person goes through as they're waiting for that. And is this the right person to go to? And am I getting the right treatment? So to me, cognitive is the best thing that I became cognitively aware what every one of my cancer patient or otherwise, what they go through. So, yes. And then of course it's emotional and of course it's behavioral. And one thing back up to empathy is supposed to be where you don't bond with your patients. I don't know. How do we not bond with our patients? I mean, like I'm hugging them and, I'm bonding with them in a different way. I went to their home. I'll send them a casserole. You bond with your patients, So I think cognitive would be to me the most being aware.
Very good. Megan, how about you? Emotional, cognitive, behavioral?
I think I can agree with Dr. Cynthia H, because I think it starts with cognitive, but I think, cognitive leads to a behavioral change. So I think both could be affected. Me personally, I am a 2-time brain tumor survivor. Interestingly, my first brain tumor I found as I was traveling to go tubing in Cook Forest and Clarion. So another connection there. I had gotten into an accident and, at first I didn't think anything was wrong. My sister was the driver and she looked pretty banged up. My dad comes driving down from Clarion, decides to take us to Clarion Hospital. And I get, I'm telling him, oh, Doug, the side of my face feels funny, He's like, let's just get a CT scan, make sure everything's okay. And in an instant, my life changed. I found out about the first brain tumor. And, you don't expect how any of the feelings, emotions, I went through the spectrum. I was numb, I was angry, I was upset, I was hopeful. You experience everything in an instant. And then, like Dr. H said, you go through this process of surgery, appointments, all that you need to take care of yourself. And even when you think you're done, for me personally, 3 years to the same date, I found out about my second one. So in terms of how I look at my patients now, I personally listen to them more because they just want to tell their story. They just want to have their minute to share their feelings, to share their thoughts. And they say, if you listen to a patient long enough, they'll tell you what's wrong. It's not always the physical. Sometimes it's all of that extra baggage and load that they're carrying. So for me, my experience has, not only made me realize what I was thinking in the spectrum of emotions that you can experience, but I also know that my patients are going to feel similar things and I need to be there to listen to them because they may not have the family, they may not have the caretaker and support. So, at the very least, I can give them that extra 5 minutes they need, even if I need to be with an attending on rounds. I know I'm very much more open to, especially the people who've just received bad news. I make sure to go in and drop off an extra Jell-O for them or just sit with them in solidarity because their whole life just changed. And I can recognize that and understand it.
Cynthia M., how about you?
I actually think my health journey has opened me more up to the emotional side of it. I think, I come from a nursing background, so the how, what, when, where was always in my mind when I would have somebody with a new diagnosis. And I feel like the cognitive part in knowing what's coming next and leading them down that road I felt comfortable with. I had bowel issues in 2016 and thought it was C. diff. In fact, I was arguing with the hospitalist as I was admitted in septic, saying this is clearly C. diff, and it wasn't. Crohn's colitis, ended up with a perfed bowel and ended up with an ostomy less than 6 months later. So pretty severe case. And I thought I was fine. I went into that hospital knowing that I was sick. And even when I perforated the bowel, I knew that things weren't good. I knew exactly what they were going to have to do. I knew they were going to do the ostomy. I knew all of that going in. I was calmly explaining this to my family, what was going on, and not thinking about it from an emotional standpoint. And it wasn't until many weeks later when it hit me that this was my life now and things were different. And getting caught up with those emotions definitely took me a little while. I was more in the medical side of it and distancing myself. And then I had to lean into the emotions and to the body image issues and to all of that goes along with a big change. So now, not that I was emotionally constipated before, as my friends like to say, I feel like I have a much more and deeper understanding of what people are feeling and what they're going through. And not only with my patients, but myself, opening myself up to feeling all those feelings and not just thinking of things clinically. And as new things come up and new problems and new meds and whatever else I have to go through with this diagnosis, taking a breath and trying to think of it not just from the medical clinical side, but what's that going to mean if I have to be on infusions every 4 weeks? What does that mean? And thinking, how's that going to make me feel? And it was the emotional side that I opened up to.
So one of the things that actually, Cynthia, you touched on it, and Cynthia H., you touched on it a little bit too, is sometimes as physicians, we know too much. And in knowing too much, we try to take on the role as physician for ourselves. Or, here's the big thing, we brush it off. It couldn't possibly be X, Y, Z. This couldn't be happening to me because I take such good care of myself. And, that's a big lie because especially as female physicians, we have several other roles as well. And for 6 months back in 2010 and 2011, I had intermittent bowel obstructions and didn't realize it. And then I too had a perforation of an infected diverticulum and had to undergo a bowel resection. And it got me thinking, when you have a patient that maybe they're neglecting things, or how did you not know this was going on? And boom, guilty. So, as docs, we know a little bit too much to be good patients. In fact, we're horrible patients. Any other comments about that and those three components?
It's just really hard to separate.
It is. It's very hard to separate.
I think having this intimate understanding of the patient perspective allows us to more fully act with each of them. Even though we may resonate more with one, I think that each of our personal experiences and stepping into that patient role allows us to act in a way that is, more emotional, allows us to have these behavioral changes, allows us to think like a patient. We go to all this schooling years and years over a decade, but I don't think there's any better way to learn than through experience. So each doctor will have their own story, and me as a future doctor, I have my story, but I think it's a necessary part for us to be better physicians, to have at least something that we can say, okay, I've been through that a little bit.
So that actually takes me right into the next talking point. Empathy can be taught to a degree, but there are four main things, inherent things that influence one's level of empathy, and they are age and experience. Sorry, Cynthia, age, that puts us at an advantage. Practice of self-reflection, your ability to kind of step back and say, how am I feeling about this? Appraisal of situations, and emotional expression. Of those things, what has primarily influenced your personal level of empathy? And I'm going to start with Megan because she's the newest to this osteopathic medicine gig. So age and experience, practice of self-reflection, appraisal of situations, or your ability to emotionally express yourself.
I would say that I think that appraisal of situations goes hand in hand with age and experience. And although I haven't perhaps gotten where my fellow compatriots are, I think I can even see the growth from where I started to where I now find myself about to, become a resident. I think when we're young, even if we're not inherently selfish, we tend to focus on our lives more, what we will do and be, how we can make our parents proud, what our ideas of success are. And so even though we may think of others and we may volunteer or we may see our patients, I think we get a sense of our scope at that time. But as we age and we grow and we garner these experiences, I'm in the hospital more, I'm interacting with patients more, and I've had my own personal experiences. I think I've garnered more education, more awareness in a world outside of my own, and I'm better able to understand both my peers and strangers alike because I've seen more and I've been through more myself. So consequently, adopting this global view allows me to better appraise these situations. So I think these two things go hand in hand, really.
Very good. Cynthia M.
I actually think with being ill and all the emotions I started feeling as part of that, I took kind of a comprehensive approach to myself because I was having depressive symptoms and not feeling well. And I started meditation and I started that self-reflection kind of practice that I use to this day. And I really think that has helped a lot. It's helped me slow down. It's helped me identify things in my life, interactions with my patients, interactions with my friends and family that I then can use to help empathize with other people. Different relationships I've worked on developing and reflecting on. And then when I see those relationships, I can empathize with other patients related to that. So I really think that personal reflection has been something that has helped me deepen my empathy and able to really think about, oh, yeah, when I was going through that, yeah, I was feeling all that, but I was ignoring it. And so when I see a patient going through something and ignoring it, I say, okay, but you're going to have to deal with this eventually, and kind of teasing that out of them because I went through that and I reflected on it and I know that it's helpful.
Cynthia H., how about you? Age and experience, practice of self-reflection, appraisal of situations, or your ability to express yourself emotionally?
Well, first of all, with age comes wisdom, right? So we can just check on that. I think that one of the things, and I'll just mention this, one of the things when I got breast cancer, I absolutely wanted no one to know. I didn't want to share it with anybody. So I didn't share it with any patients. I called my very best friends and said, I'm sharing this with you. It's not your story to tell. Don't tell it. And I'll tell people when I'm ready to tell it. I want to sail through this. I want to get through my surgery, my chemo, my radiation, whatever I need to do. and I just want to keep working. I don't want to even people to know, I don't want to miss work. So I put myself in this crazy mode, and not that it was crazy because it got me through, and then eventually I was able to open up about it. Okay. And then express how I feel about it, and then be able to express to other people everything that I was feeling and why I tried to harbor it now while I'm willing to speak about it. But it took quite a while. It wasn't something that just happened right off the bat because I was so protective of myself. One of my friends said to me, Cynthia, people just like you and they want to help you. So you just need to let them do it. And I'm like, that's still not your story to tell. So you don't tell people. I'll tell people that when I'm ready to tell people that, But through that, was it right or wrong that I did that or didn't do that? I don't know. But that's the way I handled it at the time. But then when I was ready to express to people, this is what I've gone through, and they've been totally shocked, right? It gave me, they did want to help. And they did want to be, they were sorry that they weren't helping me be part of it as I went through it and just went through with my very closest friends and of course, my family, who was spectacular. So with all of that, learning to express and finally expressing that helped me when I was dealing with patients to be more aware and be able to appraise their situation to help them emotionally express what it is that they needed. I always have this tendency to overjudge. Like I want to finish somebody's sentence for them, right? Because I think I know. But what I might have needed is not necessarily what somebody else needs. So I think allowing that emotional expression allows me to better appraise my own emotional expression, and encouraging patients' emotional expression allows me to better appraise what they needed from me, or how I could help them.
And that was absolutely perfect. Led right into my next talking point for us. Based on your personal experience, did you make changes in the way you care for patients? And have you changed the way you care for yourself? And Cynthia H., you described that perfectly. Megan, were you able to make changes, or have you made changes?
I believe I have. I think I listen more carefully to my patients. One of the sets of feedback I always get from my preceptors is that I have very thorough histories and I take a lot of note. They kind of make fun of me a little bit. They call me the stenographer because I just will write down everything they say and I'll listen to them for that extra 15 minutes. I don't get the best marks for speed because I'll sit there and I'll hear their stories. But I think that was what was so important for me, is to be heard and listened to when I was going through it. I know there were some times in the hospital when I woke up from brain surgery. I was in the hospital for quite a few days and I had lost a lot of my eyesight. I had a homonymous hemianopsia from the surgery and I couldn't see and I couldn't walk very well. I was very weak and I couldn't really go to the bathroom even without help. And it was such a humbling experience. I felt like I wasn't seen or heard. I mean, of course, my family was there to help me, but I felt like my needs weren't necessarily being met. So for me to give patients that extra minute to just hear, what do they need? Do you need someone to listen to you? Do you need some food? Do you need to be cleaned up? I always make sure to do that for them and to listen, because I think that was what was super important to me. I also think I give patients a lot of hope and I like to help them think about the long run and things. Even my patients who aren't experiencing, say, something as terrible as cancer, say when I'm in the family practice office, I like to think about their long term and help them talk about their options, because I think it's helpful to see the long run and to have hope in making these changes in their lives. And so I tend to take the view that all things heal with the tincture of time. So I like to help them plan that out, because that was important for me to see the long term, that I wasn't always going to, be a patient. I wasn't always going to not be able to walk as well or to see as well, that there was still something to look forward to at the end of all this. And I think that's what helped me get through it, and then to subsequently go on to be a med student and achieve all the things that I wanted to achieve. So I try and sort of recreate these experiences for them.
Very good. For myself, I like to think that I'm not as judgy as I had been, especially when I see somebody, it's very common now, but pregnant and out of wedlock. Back in the 80s, early 80s, that wasn't so great, but still, folks that have substance use disorder, I try to be not as judgmental with them, because we don't know the whole story and the whole background. People that have issues with their weight, like myself, we don't know that whole background story until we ask. So I'm hoping that my personal experiences have really allowed me to be not as judgmental in caring for others. Cynthia M., how about you?
I think I'm willing to be more vulnerable with my patients, and I think that has helped. I had a patient who had an ostomy who was having problems, and I just shared. I said, I also have an ostomy. This is how I care for my ostomy. This is what I'm doing, and this is what has worked for me. And it was like a whole wall came down, and a lot of the emotional, behavioral, all of the issues came out that they were holding back because they didn't feel like doctors really understood what they were going through. But I think even outside of that issue, my own struggles with my weight, now when I'm addressing weight with patients, I will say, I've struggled with this too. This is what has worked for me in the past. This is what I still struggle with. Where are you on your journey? What has worked with you? And them seeing me being a person going through the same struggles, I think has also helped break down those walls and just being open, whether it's just a long hospitalization. I had a patient who had open heart surgery and complications and was talking about the long hospitalization and just being in the hospital for a long time. And I said, yes, I was in the hospital for 12 days and I felt I'd never slept in that entire time. And we were able to just discuss that. So I think these are things that I probably would never have thought to share with patients, my own personal experiences, my own vulnerabilities, if you will, my own weaknesses. But I think it really has helped me connect better, bond to some extent with the patients, even though that's not part of empathy. But it also helps them relate to me and see me more as a person and maybe listen to the advice I'm giving a little bit better.
It helps you partner. So, ladies, is there anything else that you all would like to add to this discussion on empathy and firsthand lesson in empathy? Megan?
So the second part of the question was, have you changed the way that you care for yourself? And I think it's important for me to share not only with my colleagues as well as with other people, okay? But I think that we, as physicians, obviously we give, and I think we put ourselves behind because we've got to get this done and that chart done and this prescription called and all this other stuff done. And so it did change. My personal experience with breast cancer changed the way that I cared for myself, and that I had to say, you know what? I don't know when this is going to come back to bite me, if or when it's going to come back to bite me. And I said to the oncologist, what really bothers me the most is that you never, ever once told me that I'm going to be okay. The surgeon never once told me I'm going to be okay. So and she said, I can't say that. And I said, I know, but I'd feel better if you did, right? And we don't have that security. So it made me say to myself, all right, you have a life or death situation. It could have been a life or death situation. Right now, it seems like you're still in the life situation, and I am, because it's been 13 years this month, actually. I did, though, became very, very aware of taking care of myself better. And knowing when I get to that point that I feel like I'm going to crack, that, okay, you got yourself back here again. Now I know better how to unwind that. Now I know better how to focus better on to what I need for myself, such as eating correctly, exercise, meditation, exactly like Cynthia M. said. I just think that made me more self-aware of me before self-care became so popular, okay? So I think that that's important for all of us to continue to do and continue to remind ourselves. And I think as we've watched in POMA and all of the meetings, and all of the meetings now include how we deal with stress, how we deal with substance abuse, or whatever your issues you can be, because you give and overwork and we're driven to keep doing what we're doing. So we have to know how to decompress that. So I think my personal experience helped me, and I try to relate that to other people. So yeah, I take more vacations now.
As you should.
Yeah.
Cynthia Myers.
Again, I think exactly what you said. You change your perspective. This job, this career, this life will take as much from you as you are willing to give, and you have to be the one to draw the line. And I made a big career change. It was during the pandemic. I was immune compromised, and struggling to work. I felt I was burdening my partners with days off and missed days and not caring for my patients the way I wanted to. And I made the decision to step back and to pursue more administrative positions. Not that administrative positions are throwaway or anything. They're definitely needed, but a little bit more flexibility and a little less demanding of my time. Able to make those adjustments, making sure I had a good system, making sure I had some surgeries, took care of some things that I was putting off and should not have been, and didn't go back to clinical practice until I felt ready. And I put limitations on it because with this disease, inflammatory bowel disease, it's worse with stress. It's worse when you don't take care of yourself. And so when I went back to work in a clinical field, I made sure I had limits. I'm only seeing patients for 6 hours because then I need to take a break. Different things like that I put into my schedule to allow me to do that. And I was fortunate to find a company that was very willing to work with me. But I think knowing that you can make this career whatever you need it to be for you and still be there for your patients.
Absolutely. And your family, and most importantly, yourself. Megan, final thoughts?
Yes. So I think that I agree with what the doctors had said, that you have to be able to take care of yourself. And I think that physician is synonymous with teacher. And how can we teach our patients what they need to know to do better in their lives if we can't even give ourselves grace and, take care of our own stress? So I think there's self-empathy as well, where you recognize, understand, and validate your own emotions, experiences, and feelings, and just take good care of ourselves. If we're going to do it for our patients, we should do it for ourselves. So I think giving yourself that grace, exercising, eating right, doing the things you need to do, because now that we've all been in that patient role, I know we don't want to be back there again, or I think we all want to do whatever it takes to keep ourselves living the healthiest, most vibrant life we can so that we can be that person for our patients and champion their cause.
Very well said, Megan. So I want to thank everyone for joining us for this edition of POMA Does. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. If you have an idea for a topic, please share it with us at POMA.org. Have a good evening, and thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Bye, ladies. Nice talking to you.
You too. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of POMA Does. Be sure to subscribe to POMA Does wherever you listen to your podcasts, and tell your friends and colleagues to tune in. Learn more about osteopathic medicine and POMA on our webpage, www.poma.org, and join the conversation on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Or email us at poma@poma.org. We'd love to hear from you. Join us next time for another edition of POMA Does.